It was nice of you to let me mention that letter that I wrote to you. And I actually went back and read it last night.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good synopsis of support groups. And it's 15 years. It's just been remarkable. You've got your 25-year benchmark. I've got my 15. The extraordinary things that have happened in that group are all gifts. And they're gifts from you and your wife.
Well, I
know other people fund
for sure,
elements and come together, but you have been so good with support groups. Okay, I just need to not do this because I'm Chris, come back here. We just had, You weren't there at the opening of the art exhibit, were you?
Not this year, no.
Yeah. I painted a picture of the two people who are in the support group who have really relied on the support group.
Okay.
And he went all the way to CAR T therapy. I don't know if you're familiar with that,
but
it's the granddaddy of them all.
Yeah.
I mean, they destroy your immune system and bring it back up. I'd never seen such a picture of love in my life. They would report back to the support group about how he was doing. He nearly died a dozen times.
Yeah.
Went in to see him. He had 14 bags hung. And they were balancing those with various levels of toxicity at various times. And, oh my gosh, to see how she cared for him was something we all should wish for in our lives.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
What is his story now?
Well, as of about 2 months ago, he was released from the hospital and he went back to Terre Haute. Again, he'll be in constant treatment.
Yeah.
There'll be more infusions at various times to keep his immune system strong because it's very, very weak. And when I spoke to the group about him and about that painting, I said, they're at home, they're in Terre Haute. He is watching his grandchildren run around the kitchen island and then getting up and chasing after them.
That's awesome.
So it really is awesome. It's Dr. Robertson's the one who manages that program, the CAR T.
Yeah.
And I love the CAR T program because it was pretty much funded by LLS. Everybody walked away from it when there were some youth deaths in the early 90s. And they just kept funding Dr. Carl June out of University of Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Like 35, 40 million it ultimately ended up being. And if it were not for his breakthrough,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, something to be said for perseverance, that's for sure.
There is, or sometimes just living on a hunch, because that was a hunch to keep supporting somebody in this field that nobody else was paying any attention to.
Yeah, it's got to be interesting because I'm sure, like him, and there's probably 100 or 1,000 other researchers who have that hunch. They go down the path and they run into roadblocks, and it's like
usually funding.
Well, that, but if they're running into a roadblock in terms of, I thought I was going to get this answer and I didn't. What triggers either them to say, okay, well, it's not going to work. I need to go a different direction. Or do I keep pushing to figure out what the answer is? And I'm sure that's probably a struggle they hit all the time.
And, and it's odd what can intersect, because with this little girl who was the first, Emily Whitehead was her name, the first person who they did CAR T on that was successful, she had an allergy. She was having an allergic reaction to the cells that they created. This is the treatment where they take the cells out of your body.
Okay.
They actually sent them to a viral production center here in Indianapolis. There are only 5 of them in the world. And they reprogram your cells, and they reprogrammed hers with the AIDS virus.
And then inject it back in.
in. But she was having this odd reaction. And Carl June recognized it as something that he'd seen in a family member that was an allergy, so he started putting the allergy meds in, and it made a huge difference. She woke up, and 3 days later, there was not a cancer cell in her body.
That's wild.
But if it were not for that fluke, how many flukes are there out there? There are a lot.
Probably, yeah.
There are a lot.
Is this thing on? Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Summits Podcast. Thank you all for joining us from wherever you get your podcasts, or if you're joining us on the Heroes Foundation YouTube channel, thank you for doing so. While you're there, hit that little subscribe button if you haven't already done so, and the notification bell icon so you can be alerted when new episodes like this one drop. We would greatly appreciate it. Today, we've got a neighbor of mine and longtime friend, Miss Teresa Altemeyer. Teresa and I share a common passion, which is fighting cancer and giving back to the cancer community in various ways. So, Teresa, welcome to the Summits Podcast.
It's just a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, you're welcome. We're glad to have you. Why don't you do us and our listeners and viewers a favor and provide a little background intro on yourself?
Okay. In 2009, I had been having problems with my shoulder. My tennis game was beginning to fail. And I went to see an orthopedic...
Was this at Wimbledon or after?
Yeah, well, not a chance. And I went to see an orthopedic surgeon. He was a longtime friend. And so they did an MRI of my right shoulder. And the technician was sitting there in the room, and all of a sudden he got up and he left. The doctor was not in the room at that time. And when he came back in, he brought the doctor with him. The doctor sat down, and the doctor was crying. The surgeon had tears in his eyes, and he said, I became an orthopedic surgeon, so I would never have to tell anybody what I have to tell you. Mm. He said, I am 100% sure you have lymphoma. You need to go out and find yourself a doctor. Fortunately, in our neighborhood, Vince, there are a lot of people who work for various institutions like IU Health, Community, et cetera, but I had a friend immediately across the street who was a nurse at the Simon Cancer Center. I called her up, and she was Johnny on the spot. I mean, she immediately asked me for all the reports that had been done, the MRI, et cetera. And I took them to her, and she called me back within an hour and a half, and she said, we have you scheduled with a doctor. We have you scheduled for a biopsy. It'll all take place this next week. And so then the place where this story really begins is when I walked into the room where there were two doctors, two hematologists. I wasn't even familiar with that word. It was a new word for me, a blood cancer doctor. And they were both smiling. One was older, one was younger. It turns out that the younger one, this was his very first day of practice, and I was his very first patient ever. And so his name was Jose Azar, and they asked me if I would pick at the end of the appointment if I wanted the older doctor or the young, handsome, good-looking one. But the young one, Jose, was going to be specializing in my form of lymphoma, which was chronic lymphocytic leukemia. Okay. So during the appointment, you learn to read doctors. I wasn't a good doctor reader at that point, but I was good enough. And it's a skill and a talent that people should really work on developing. It's something we talk about in the support group I'm in frequently. But they were smiling. I asked about second opinions, which can be a touchy subject if a doctor has got too big of an ego. They were enthusiastic and gave me one. And then they said at the end of the discussion, they said, we don't think you'll be active for the cancer aggressive for several years. So you need to go out and you need to live your life. And so that for me could wipe away all the major concerns, all the major worries that I would have about something immediately happening in my life, that maybe there was a chance. This is a long answer I'm giving you. No, so I did go out and live my life, and what I did was the second appointment, I came back to see the young, handsome doctor that I chose. And when I came, it was this time of year, Vince, October, and I'm a gardener. I grow dinner plate dahlias. They are enormous flowers that are about 12 inches across. Okay. And they're stunning. And I brought in a bouquet for my doctor at the second appointment, one for the nurse and one for the staff. And apparently it just touched something in my doctor. So the third appointment, he shared with me that he had just lost a patient. The patient had battled CLL, what I have. And on his deathbed, he said to Dr. Azar, I want you to commit to me that you will form a support group so that people don't have to go through what my wife and I did, where there was no one to talk to, no one who truly understood at a patient level, no one we could communicate and share our emotions and feelings and thoughts and wishes and dreams with. And so I looked at my doctor and I said, absolutely, I will do this. And that absolutely changed my life.
Yeah. Up to that point, what form of support options was the Cancer Center providing patients?
Now, that's an interesting subject because I had been involved with a not-for-profit, the Leukemia Lymphoma Society, and they and 4 or 5 other not-for-profits had been meeting for almost a year at that point.
Okay.
And what they were trying to do was figure out how to make available to people information that could be used in a support group. This was Susan G. Komen. This was the American Cancer Society. It was the Little Red Door, et cetera. We were meeting because we couldn't find a place at IU where there was a person or an office or people who could manage that information that you have in a support group. And so we were proposing to IU a cancer resource center. Mm-hmm. And the Cancer Resource Center was to fulfill a lot of those needs and be supportive of support groups. There were a few support groups at that time, but they were very loosely structured.
Okay.
Always with a staff person, medically trained, and then other facilitators. So,
okay. What when you said yes, I certainly want to do this. Then what was the next step? What was the evolution at that point?
We had probably 7 or 8 meetings, and the wife of the gentleman who passed away was involved also.
Okay.
And so we'd meet with the doctor, with Dr. Azar and Cindy and myself, and we would discuss how we thought this could be formulated. And we all did a little bit of homework and a little bit of research. Mm-hmm. And then we found out that another doctor, Dr. Kripe, at IU, a hematologist, had been trying to put together something that would meet these kinds of needs.
Right.
And so the timing was quite remarkable. And so they formed something called the Cancer Resource Center, which later evolved to encompass CompleteLife. Mm-hmm. But we were constantly looking for resources, ways to better it, ways to develop it. And there were probably other hospitals in the United States and medical facilities and medical centers who were trying to do the same thing at this current time. But we were really, to our knowledge, the first to get it done by bringing the not-for-profits in as full partners to try to make sure that information would get communicated effectively to patients, and particularly in the support group setting.
Yeah. Where were you in your personal journey when this was kind of all happening? Was it all going on at the same time?
Well, I'd only been diagnosed about 6 months previously.
Okay.
I was not needing services yet, but I had some friends who had various forms of cancer, and I was very interested in seeing what could be done.
Sure.
I wouldn't need to be treated for 5 years.
Okay.
So it was during the time preceding that I worked with a support group. There was an interesting turning point. Once we got started, they were trying to find ways of publicizing the support groups, which was pretty much just, signage that was around the area where the hematologists are located, where their offices are. Well, we developed slowly. First, there were 1-2 people. I never showed up to have there not be anybody else there, but sometimes the count was very low.
Yeah.
Got up to 6 or 7 people on a regular basis.
Okay.
And then one of them, a gentleman, I don't know if I can really name his name or
That's
not,
fine.
but
Yep.
it's Chuck Ballard. And he died. And he was from rural Indiana. He did not receive his medical treatment at IU. And he used local resources, meaning the local oncologist, not even a hematologist. And it struck me. To this day, I am absolutely convinced that with the complexity of many of these cancers, that he might have lived if he'd gone to a larger institution.
Sure.
He might have been alive. And that just turned the flame up under me and to try to find ways to reach people who are in outlying areas and get them involved in something like a support group. And the doctors have always been very helpful in feeding, if you will, patients who appear to have a need, who want people to talk to, who understand, to be involved.
Mm-hmm.
So,
how do we reach those people at this point?
You know, it's interesting you should bring that up, because I'm about to approach IU and ask that I can be involved with something that I was involved with a number of years ago. The hematologist and all their nurses, and this is probably the case with all the other groups of medical specialties. Once a month they have a meeting, and they will allow for a brief period of time an outside speaker come in. Well, after 15 years, I don't feel like too much of an outside speaker, but there have been a lot of new hires at IU. And in that context, there are people who are not really sometimes familiar with what a support group is, what it does, what the whole, Complete Life program is about. Although there is it seems like the medical profession is sort of turning toward this more holistic approach, where it's not just the medicine, it's your whole life that needs to be treated when you've got cancer.
Yeah.
So I'm going to approach them to do that. There's so much that's available on the media now, and it's a conversation that we're going to have about how to communicate that better to patients. Even if it's just a little byline that appears with regular information that a patient would receive. So.
Sure. Well, if you could provide some guidance, you mentioned how kind of this all evolved. How would you describe the program today?
Robust. Good. Again, my perspective will come through, as you can tell already, the blood cancer support group. Mm-hmm. We generally have between 9 and 15 and sometimes as many as 20 people who will attend. I modified it so that it wasn't always just the patients speaking to each other. There's always time for that, and there's always time for somebody who has the most immediate need and is there specifically that evening because they want to share it. But I brought in so many resources from across the med center. They're just fabulous resources, anywhere from, yoga, art therapy, music therapy. There are people who are studying specific topics within the cancer field, like fear of reoccurrence, issues such as that are mentally staggering for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And there are dozens of those issues. And so the support group is extremely helpful for people getting perspective in that regard.
Yeah. How many individual groups are there now? I mean, you mentioned the blood cancer group.
I believe it's 10.
10, okay.
I believe it's 10. Some are, this will sound very odd, but some are more robust than others.
Sure.
If you look at head count. But that doesn't have very much to do with the purpose and the success of a group.
Sure.
For instance, there's a glioblastoma or brain cancer support group. Those people didn't generally die within 6 months.
Yeah.
And I was stunned when the gentleman who wanted to start it came and sat in on our support group to see what it was like and what it was about, because what a kind and generous thing to do, to look beyond yourself when you know what your fate is inevitably.
Right.
It's remarkable. So, multiple myeloma, and this is very important. There's a support group for caregivers, because they often get written out of the picture.
Sure.
When Mike asked Dr. Azar to form this group, Cindy talked to me afterwards, Mike's wife, and she said, I felt like I was an invisible person sitting in the corner, that I didn't even exist in the context of everything that was happening. Right. And so there are many people who come to the groups who are caregivers.
Yeah. Which we know caregivers are hugely important. I mean,
yes.
What a role. We've talked to several, and I think those of us as patients know that a good reason why we're here, sure, it's because of the care we received, but not just the medical care. It's the care of the caregiver at home, 100%.
Yeah, that is absolutely the case. One of the things we talk about in the support groups is communication.
Okay.
We've had sessions where people who actually study this at IU have come in and talked to us about how you can most effectively communicate with your doctor, with your family, with the caregiver. A lot of emphasis on the caregiver and the doctor mostly. I had an interesting conversation with Dr. Azar once. I said, why are the doctors sometimes not talking more about the support group? And he said, you have to always understand somebody else's frame of reference and where they're coming from. He said, in the case of me being a professional doctor, I'm listening to what the patient's saying and I'm thinking about, do they need treatment? What's the next step that we need to take? Are they really relapsing? Do I have my diagnosis right? I'm not thinking about the fact that they may go home. They've only seen me for a half hour and they have to live the rest of their lives with questions they wish they could have asked a doctor but didn't know how to ask or didn't know when to ask them or hadn't thought about asking. We talk about those kinds of questions in the support group, and it's very valuable. The caregiver, that's interesting. What do they say? Something like 40% of all cancer diagnoses end up in divorce.
Oh, wow. I haven't heard that, but that...
It's some whatever it is, the statistic. It's a staggering statistic.
Yeah.
So you have to think about how you're going to approach your other in your life whose life is now just as radically changed as yours. We found out recently, actually it was last week, that because I've had one particular form of treatment, my immune system is pretty shot. And we had a fabulous Viking cruise planned, and we were going to go transatlantic, and it was just going to be incredible. Well, we talked to the doctor about it, and he said, do you really want to be out in the middle of the South Atlantic for 10 days with absolutely zero medical facilities if you need something with a compromised immune system? So we canceled. And, you know, the look of disappointment on my husband's face, he tried to, buck it up and not go, damn, once again, we're backing out of something.
Right.
It was really hard for him. So the caregiver gets caught in a life that changes just as radically but in different ways as the person who's got cancer.
Sure. Yeah, agreed. How would you rate, if you will, the Complete Life program as it stands today from where we saw it 10, 15, 20 years ago?
Oh, my gosh. 10 or 15 years ago, they were just trying to figure out what to do and what was viable. And it was simplistic in its form in that, if you had breast cancer, you got a wig, and that's wonderful and that's very important. But it's just so much more sophisticated. When the there's a gentleman named Brian Bolerdick, and the art therapy program made a profound change in this man's life. He lost his tongue. He lost a portion of his throat to cancer, so he cannot speak. But he has chosen, through what he learned through art therapy, to speak through his art. And it's just a beautiful thing to witness. And it speaks to the sophistication of art therapy and music therapy. And, I was one of those people. I'll just be honest with you. I thought, I don't need a counselor in my life. Why would I want to do that? It seems very superfluous or fluffy. It's not. I am an artist, and it's a linear form of thinking. There's something called cancer chaos in the brain, where you think piecemeal and spotty, and all of these services tend to improve your linear thinking and make you more viable with what you're dealing with.
Right. That spot on, because I remember in its very early stages when they were trying to figure out what all would comprise this program and what can actually benefit, and the hospital wasn't funding it at all. They're a couple of doctors had this idea, and will you guys make it a pet project, try it out, let us know what you find out. To your point, different strokes for different folks. Meaning, I may find a great benefit in this component of it, and someone else, it may not matter to them at all. And then
that's right.
Down the line, it's for me, music therapy. Granted, I was 26, and this girl comes in to play the guitar, and I was just, I don't know. To me, it felt weird. But she goes across the hall, and the next person, it might have absolutely changed their outlook and made their day. I'm like,
that's
perfect.
Right. That's right.
That's all we need.
And one of the newer components that they've added is this MOVE program.
Right. Yep.
And that is absolutely fascinating. How seems to be more research that is determining that how healthy you are before you get your cancer will do great wonders for sustaining how you do during your treatment period. People knew that it would help during it, but they didn't realize that how fit you get yourself ahead of time is a wise thing to do. So
sure.
Theoretically, let's say you've got 3 people in your family who've got breast cancer. Work out. Be ready. I mean, statistically, it's going to happen.
Right. Yeah.
Or could happen.
Correct. Yeah. We've been very happy to help support the MOVE program as well. I thought it made a lot of sense, not just for folks going through the process, but at the same time, from a prevention standpoint too.
Yeah.
I mean, it can't hurt. Certainly it helps get us in better shape, keep us in better shape, not just from a potential anti-cancer perspective, but heart health, lung health, et cetera, the whole shebang. You mentioned Brian Boulderdick. So interesting enough, I saw some of the artwork that was on display at the most recent Complete Life Program art show, and I saw one of the paintings. Didn't know who it was from, but I saw it. I was like, oh wow. Something about that one I really like, and I don't know anything about art, just whether I like it or I don't like it. And I was like, man, what are they going to do with that piece? And I think I asked Cindy this or asked somebody, and they're like, I don't know. I could find out. And said, okay. And I later found out it was one of Brian's pieces. So I had his email from maybe a year or two prior. So I found it, shot him a quick email, said, hey Brian, I don't know what your plans are for this piece, but I would love to buy it or do something with it. And so immediately he came back and said, oh yeah, he goes, I would love for you to put it on display. And I said, okay, well, tell me what you want for it. He's like, nothing. Yeah. Just the fact that you want it. Just do me this favor. He goes, share the story about the problem. I'm like, oh, done. That's easy. So I look forward to putting that up.
One of the wonders about the Complete Life Center is that my husband has a saying, chance comes to the prepared mind.
Yeah.
And the more informed a patient can be, the better off I believe their end result will be. Because they learn things like how to ask the right questions when you go in and see a doctor. What's really important about your disease? Well, there was not a central repository that existed for this kind of information, even though there were tons of brochures and dozens and dozens of, hundreds and hundreds of pieces of literature that had been carefully vetted. This is by the American Lung Association, American Cancer Society, Leukemia Lymphoma Society. The list goes on and on and on and on. Now they have a repository. It's like a library you go into at the Cancer Resource Center, and you can get answers that will help you all through your journey. And before, people just didn't even know that it existed. They didn't know about those organizations. So just the fact that you provide support for that center, you benefit so many forms of cancer, and you benefit the other not-for-profits in doing their job too.
Yeah, for sure. I know we share the same mentality that while we both had a blood cancer, and it would have been really easy for us to focus on that, we also know 100 other people had 100 other forms of cancer. And to us, like I just hate cancer in general. I'm not biased towards any one. I've had friends pass away now from brain cancer and all kinds of other things. And so I just hate the disease in general.
Yeah.
I know you share the same feeling. When I look at other cancer centers now, whether it be other ones here in Indianapolis or Chicago or Cincinnati, 20, 25 years ago, I won't say none of them, but most of them did not have this Cancer Resource Center or Complete Life Program type of thing. Today, it's more commonplace, though I'm sure some are more robust than others.
Yeah. When I had my first appointment with Dr. Azar, and I asked about a second opinion, he gave me a name of a doctor in Ohio at the James Cancer Center, who eventually that doctor moved to Cincinnati. But I was always stealing their literature and bringing it back and trying to put it under people's noses so they would see what the programs were that these other people were doing. Sure. Because the Resource Center initially on was trying to manage its own self. And yeah, it would look outside of its own arena a little bit, but they were not really researching what they were going to do. And so they put it together beautifully.
Well, it's good. I mean, there's no sense in reinventing the wheel.
That's right.
If someone else is doing something
That's
and
right.
they're being very, very successful at it, how do we replicate that?
Right.
If we want to modify it in our own way, so be it. But there's no sense in starting from scratch. That's great. How would you describe the program today? And then what do you think it might still be missing? What can we, I mean, there's always room for improvement. What can we do to further benefit the center going forward?
Yeah. Good question. They've introduced something called the Simon Says program at the Simon Cancer Center. And what they do is they cover various topics. It tends to be very disease-oriented, and it's really excellent. But it would be nice if there was a series that was literally the Cancer Resource Center's series, where they bring in these phenomenal resources and phenomenal researchers who are looking at all these alternative ways to deal with your cancer. I mean, they could, of course, cover cancer specifically and specific diseases, but it would be tremendous if they had like their form of a lecture series for the more holistic medicine. It would really be very, very valuable.
Okay.
Extremely valuable. Those are the people I've had to go out and try to recruit and find at the Regenstrief Institute or elsewhere to come and speak to the patients.
Yeah.
In the support group.
What would you say of those that you surround yourself with in the support groups, what are their biggest need or biggest needs?
It's been really interesting lately. There's been a huge outcry for mental health.
Okay, yeah.
For mental health resources. And fortunately, the woman who co-facilitates with me, Michelle Hoy, she's actually unfortunately going to be moving on because she's gotten so involved in this very specific area. And the studies that are being done and the actual clinical trials, all of this is free of charge, that are highly supportive of mental health initiatives. And if there could be a mental health program, 2 or 3 series, it would really, really benefit a lot of people.
Okay. What would you say are the biggest mental health challenges these patients and maybe even the caregivers are having? I could think of several, but...
Oh, it's anywhere from lack of understanding the implication of their disease, lack of understanding the statistics revolving their disease. Some people are very, very fearful, and not that they won't always carry fear, and there isn't some reason for fear, but they don't need to be as fearful as they are.
Yeah.
Fear of reoccurrence is always an enormous issue.
Yeah.
That people they have a twitch, a tweak, anything. They're running to the doctor to try to find out what it is.
Yeah.
Some legitimacy in that, but it's often an overreaction. There's a fear of the language, and this is particularly notable. My group works at its highest level when we have a new person come in.
Okay.
Because they know how to take somebody who's crying, and they usually do cry with the group, somebody who's a man who's never cried in front of other people he doesn't know before. And when they leave, it's not that they've got a huge smile on their face, but they are understanding far better where they are, what they can do, how they can get help, other issues that they may want to consider. Mm-hmm. Oh gosh, there's.
Well, you guys are providing that warm blanket.
We are.
Yeah.
That's beautifully worded. I never thought of it exactly like that.
I think even for folks who are then on the other side, I know I've experienced this from time to time where someone I know then loses their battle. You can have something, they call it survivor's guilt. And I think it hits people in different ways. To me, it hits a couple different times. Like,
yeah.
I think on one hand, it for just further enrages that fire in me to keep doing what we're doing. But at the same time, there's also part of me that says, why am I the one who's fortunate enough to get through this and to continue on? And my roommate from senior year in college didn't. Yeah. Like, I can't, no one can explain that, but it bugs me.
It bugs me too. I often tell people that the last 15 years since I was diagnosed have been the very best years of my life. Because, you wander around and, as a female whose husband could be the single income earner for the family. I had lots of free time, but I was raising 2 children, but I did lots of volunteer work, and it was lovely volunteer work, and I benefited in a number of causes, but it wasn't like what I eventually evolved to, which was working with one of the not-for-profits, and as a volunteer, I was the board chair, and knowing that I saved lives, knowing that lives were being changed, knowing that people were finding the right resources, knowing that we kept people out of, I don't want to say harm's way, but we got them to the highest level of medical professionalism to get the right answers for them. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on what we were able to do. And, I look at what you've done, supporting research now, in addition to the Cancer Resource Center and the Complete Life Program. It's just remarkable. I was tapped by a doctor. I don't know if somebody tapped you. Maybe it was your wife in your conversations or whatever, but I find it absolutely remarkable. I never in a million years, for all the impact that I've had, would have ever thought to start a foundation.
Yeah.
Are you crazy?
Apparently, yes. Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that because I say this story now. I mean, we're 24, finishing our 24th year, and I don't shy away from this. There have been many nights where we laid in bed and said, "Oh my God, what did we get ourselves into?"
Yeah.
But I think even in those times, especially high stressful times around events or whatever's going on, there are more times where we say, "What more can we do?" That still isn't enough. We're still having people that we know just in our close circles who are being diagnosed and sadly aren't making it through, and that's what keeps the fire burning. I mentioned to you before we started this episode that we had recorded another episode earlier this morning, and early 20s daughter of a friend of mine diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. Like, why? Like, that makes no sense, and it will keep my language clean, but like that makes me very angry.
You talk about your inspiration. I had a friend who was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, and she lived longer than any other patient on Tarceva, longer than anybody in the world.
Okay.
So people were continuously coming to see what this woman was doing.
Right.
And what she was doing was working with some of the doctors at IU and formed a program where she went out and she spoke to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of school children about the dangers of smoking. She spent 11 years of her life doing that, and the impact was enormous.
Yeah.
And she was a dear, dear friend, and she invited me to go with her. I saw what this was like, what that whole experience was about, and she was the person who let me know it was okay to do this and that you really could make a difference, that it could really be meaningful.
Right.
And that's what you've done. You've had your muses also.
Yeah, thank you. Certainly haven't done it alone. We've taken people like yourself. You and your husband have been great supporters over the years of us and just all the friends, family, and I think the community that we live in. It's pretty special. I mean, we talked about attitude, but we also talked about that. What's the term about raising a child? Like it takes a village to raise a child.
Yeah.
Like same difference. It takes a village to surround themselves and support others that are in need, and whether it's a cancer diagnosis or what have you. The community that we live in, just in Indianapolis in general, but in particular, our neighborhood has been very supportive of one another, and it's when you live there long enough, that network grows and grows.
47 years.
Yeah. We talk about this earlier, especially in another podcast on the business side, but we say, not only don't burn a bridge, but if you're trying, you need to really develop your network, because in Indianapolis, you're really only 2 people away from whoever you need to get to.
Right.
And most people are generally open to helping you find that connection that you're looking for.
Right.
I mean, I think in this world, in the cancer community, that really holds true. And so I don't want to say it hasn't been easy, but it's been easier knowing there are many hands who are here willing to help and who have the same passion and want to see the same end result. So we're very thankful.
I do believe that there's a reason, there's a key factor why that all works that way, Vince. And it's worked that way for you. It's worked that way for me. It's worked that way for your wife. And that is because of your sincerity in what you're doing.
Yeah.
And people see it, feel it, know it. This is lives at stake. This is not a casual dalliance and raising money for, some inconsequential thing or some inconsequential service. This makes a difference, and they know that you are sincere and from the heart.
Yeah. Well, thank you. We appreciate that.
I mean it.
What else would you like to share?
Oh, gosh. We've talked about a lot of things. What else would you like to know?
I guess what I would probably, my last question for you would be, you've been doing a lot of things in this realm and been doing it for a while. We mentioned this a little bit earlier. Would you say you're any less passionate today?
No.
We may be more tired on occasion, but are we any less passionate?
No, we're not.
Yeah.
Because the mission goes on.
Right.
I mean, there continue to be new diseases, new drugs, new opportunities, it's just a constant evolution, but it's important work. Mm-hmm. It has to be done. I think of the voids that would be out there, all the people who've had these wonderful experiences through the support groups, etc. If it were not for the Heroes Foundation and others, but you guys notably, with that program in particular and with the art program, the void would be enormous. The void would be huge. And those lives would never have the chance to have the experiences that they've had and the change agents that they've had.
Yeah.
So grateful to you.
Well, thank you. And we're grateful for folks like yourselves to help these programs gain life and expand and have the impact that they've had. I think in some respects we've just done the easy part and helped provide some funding to get them going. But it's you all who had the ideas and the wherewithal to really support them and manage them and push them. Mm-hmm. That's why they are what they are.
I heard something this morning that's a vision of success. I had breast cancer also, and I have Parkinson's. So I go to the Neuroscience Center, and I'd been talking with them about repeatedly with the doctors and other social workers that they don't have some of these kinds of services available. And I just found out earlier today that the art therapist is now going to be working through the cancer resource, the Complete Life Program at Simon. For the neurology patients, for their issues and their needs. So I think it's just one sign of steps that are being taken.
Right. The
power and the effectiveness of what the Cancer Resource Center and the Complete Life Program are.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I was thrilled. I love art.
Yes.
I love art.
Well, that's great. That's great to hear. And I think that maybe that's just one tipping point to
it is
provide further services to those folks and spread from there.
It is. When they were starting a support group in the Neuroscience Center, I went to that, and they didn't know about the Complete Life Program, and they were trying to bring up a program, and I was just, all the resources are there. Yeah. They're all there. Just go talk to them.
Awesome. Well said. Well, Teresa, we appreciate you coming in today. We appreciate your time. We appreciate you sharing the story, your personal story, but also the story about those different support services and how impactful those are for cancer patients as well as caregivers.
Well, thank you.
No,
thank you for what you do. It's been a pleasure to be here and talk to you.
Thank you. And thank all of you guys for joining us on this episode of the Summits Podcast. We appreciate your time as well. If you have any comments or questions, maybe about how a support group has benefited you, or conversely, how you might learn more about the support groups that either the IU Simon Cancer Center or other cancer centers, hit us up in the comments. We'll be happy to try to answer as many of those and point you in the right direction. We greatly appreciate that. And don't forget, folks, beat cancer.